All right, now, so the next thing we need to do is to actually start interacting with our endpoint to make our website dynamic. So to do that, we need to actually set up some few things and get started. So I'm just going to close this. And right now, we need to actually use Axios. So, but before we start using Axios, we need to actually do some env settings. So we need to create an environment file, so which we call env. And what this is going to do is it's going to hold all our env related variables, such as our secret key, private keys, just keys is going to hold everything. But for now, what I'm just going to use this for is I'm going to use it for um, to hold our endpoint. Okay. The reason why I'm not going to I'm still going to hard code it, but the reason why I'm putting it in our env is if you're working in an organization and your endpoint needs to be set from the DevOps side. Okay. So you can just give them the variable in the env and they can set the value for it. So let's just go ahead and create that. So I'm going to say React app, because if you want to use an env in React, it has to start with React app. So I'm going to say API and point URL. So this will be the link to our endpoint. So which is um, if you remember, our endpoint is running on localhost 80,000 rather. So 80,000. Okay, so you can do something like API, but I'm just going to leave it this way. Okay, this actually makes sense, and that's just all we need to do. And right here, we need to create another configuration, and this configuration this time is going to hold our environment variable configuration. Okay, so simple as that. Let's just go ahead and create that, and this will be environment uh, config. Okay, dot gs. Okay, so right now we're going to say constant div is going to be so this is going to be an object. We're going to say API endpoint. So this will be the value that we're actually setting from the from um from the env. So going to say process, because this is actually how you can actually get values from your envs. So this will be app URL. So it's as simple as that. So we want to create three different kind of variable. One would be for dev, one would be for production. So we might want to have a different URL for our production. We might want to have a different URL for our dev or our test, different endpoints. But so we can actually set them now, but we're using the same thing to actually test them. But if you're having a different endpoint from for your dev, a different API endpoint URL for your dev, staging, production. Yeah, so you can just set everything right here. So this will be test. So so what you can now do is we can say constant. We need to actually use get env. Okay, env. Okay, so this will be a method, and right here we're going to use a very simple switch statement. So we need to actually know the environment that our app is on. Okay, so this will also be process dot env dot node dot underscore env. So um this will give us the the environment that we're working on. So if case now will be if it's a development environment, we want to return the dev endpoint. Okay, so everything starts to make sense right now. So we return dev. Okay, so if it's production, let's say case production. Okay, so if we've actually built our files, um, we're going to return production. Okay, so we're going to return this particular variable. So and the last one is case, and this will be test. So if we're in a test environment, we're going to return test. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. By default we're just going to break out of the statement. Okay, so break. Okay, so I think that's all, and we can now go ahead and export constant env, which now equal to this particular get env method. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense, and we're done with this. So we're done with this, and right here in our app config we still need to do some simple configuration, and that would be to set to export. So whatever environment we're working on and whatever variable we get, we need to actually export that variable. So API based URL now equal to env. We need to actually import that env. So let's just go ahead and import that, and we say import. We need to actually destructure this out. So if you remember, we're exporting this env, so we need to actually import it in our app config. So env from, and this will be environment. Okay, and env dot api and endpoint URL. Okay, so if you're wondering where we get this, remember we in our environment config, we're actually creating this. Okay, we're actually creating where is it? This. Okay, so that's just what we're doing, and yeah, so the next thing we need to do is to actually configure our Axios. Okay, so is to actually configure our Axios to actually uh, use this env. Okay, so all we can do is we can create a new folder. I'm going to call this Axios uh, config. Okay, Axios config, simple as that. You can call it whatever you want, and right here I'm going to say fetch let's just say Axios.js. Okay, simple as that. So we're just going to do a very simple configuration, since we're not authenticating users. So if we are authenticating users, we're going to have a very different configuration. But for now, probably we might do that in the future. But for now, we're just going to keep everything simple. So right here, I'm going to say import Axios from Axios. Simple as that. And the next thing we're going to say, we want to import our base URL. Okay, so we want to import our API base URL, and we want to import that from config. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is constant. So we want to create a new service from our Axios. So I'm just going constant service equal to Axios.create. Okay, Axios.create, and this will accept some parameters, And the first one is the base URL. Okay, so we're going to set this to be equal to $API base URL, and this will be / API. Okay, so simple as that. Then we're going to set a timeout. Okay, so timeout is just when we're not getting any response from the endpoint and the number of seconds you want it to wait. So I just want it to wait about 60,000 seconds, which is about, I don't know how much that is in minutes, but you can do the math. And I'm going to export default. I'm going to export service as default. Okay, so simple as this. So we're getting there. We're getting there. So the next thing we need to do right now is to create some kind of service that we can use to actually make those calls. Okay. So I know this might sound like a lot, but believe me, this is how enterprise app are being created. This project structure can actually be scalable. You can actually build a very big application based on this project structure. So the next thing we need to do is create a new folder, and this folder we're going to call it services. Okay, services. And right here we want to create a request service. So this will be request. Probably just call it whatever you want. So for me, I'm going to call it request because I actually want to make a lot of requests. So that's why I'm calling it request. So we're going to create some simple request. For now, let's just go ahead and call category. So any request relating to categories, we're going to call it from here. So the first thing we need to do is import fetch. Remember, we can actually call this any names since we exporting default right as service, so we can call it any name. So fetch from Axios config / Axios. Okay. All right. So let's just go ahead and create a category request object. So category request, and this will actually be an empty object, so we can start appending items to that uh, object. So let's just create a simple category, and this will be like a prefix to our route. So we can now start saying category request and dot get. So this will be get all categories. Okay, so we want to make this method to get all categories, so we can have some parameters that we want to pass. So we can have that this is going to accept all the parameters, and right here what we can do is we can return a fetch. Okay, we can return a fetch. Let's just make this a small letter. So we can return the fetch. So we're returning this Axios that we created. Okay, if you remember, don't forget we're returning this Axios service that we created. So so I'm just going to do URL will be category. Okay, remember these categories. So it's going to be the base URL / API / categories. So and the method is actually going to be a get method. Okay, it's actually going to be a get method because we actually want to get something. And I think that will be all. This is actually method, not methods. Yeah, unknown word category. So we actually miss the spelling for that. Category. Okay, yeah. So that's that. So let's just get the spelling correct, guys. And the next thing we can do is params, in case we're passing some parameters within our query, and we're just going to append that to this. And basically, I think we're done, right? Yeah, so we're done. And the next thing we can do is, I think we can actually export this service. So let's just export this service to be used in other views. Okay, so this will be category request. Okay, good. Now we've created this is actually categories. Yeah, so we've created the service to actually get categories. So this like the object. So within our views, so let's just test this out and see that if it's working. So within our landing page, let's just go ahead and try that. So we're going to have use effect. So we're just going to try this, and we're still going to structure this more, but I just want you guys to see how it actually works. So I'm going to say constant categories, and this will actually be category request dot get all categories. Okay, and this is all we need to do. And let's just say console dot log on categories. Okay, let's just console dot log on categories, and let's just see that let's just import this use effect hook. So use effect. Okay, all right. So let's go back into our browser and open our terminal. We still have an error. Use effects. Yeah, okay, we've gotten that right. And let's go into our console. I think we have some errors. Yeah, so those are just basic errors. And let's just refresh this and see that boom, 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 boom. We have a promise and we have an error. Uh, Not found. Okay. Let's see our network tab, and our network tab. And let's see we have. Okay, so we have some error right here which says not found. So let's just see where we actually went wrong. See, um, yeah. So let's just see that this is actually from request categories. Okay, this is actually correct. I think let's just say fetch. Let's just call this fetch for now. The error might actually the name might actually give us an error. So let's rename this to fetch, because I don't actually see an error from the code. Let's All right then. I think I know why the error is. So this is actually URL with uppercase. So let's just go ahead and try this again. And yeah,